Hello, my soccer universe. To be honest, I have, as a Milan fan, more or less already spaced out on that Serie A season, not on the full season, because there's a huge game coming up in the midweek, which is the first leg of the Coppa Italia semifinal. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. But overall, as a Milan fan, it's another loss at Napoli with the same pattern. You sleep in the first half, then you try to make the comeback, and this time you fall short, and it's another loss. And it's so galling because, honestly, there are some really well-performing players in this Milan squad. I'm looking at Pulisic, I'm looking at Reinders, who would be high points, and I actually like seeing them play. And this Milan team can turn it on if they want to, but most of the time they don't want to, and leadership issues and. I've already talked about that ad nauseum. It's just bad. I'm also not really excited that Paratici is now becoming most likely the new sporting director. Allegri maybe coming in, Conte coming in. I don't like either one of these appointments, honestly. For me, Milan is a team that should appoint a young and hot coach that takes them to the next level, like an Arrigo Sacchi, like a Fabio Capello, even like a Carlo Ancelotti. Pretty huge names, but they were nobodies when they came to Milan. Maybe not Ancelotti, but the other two definitely were. But Ancelotti made his name at Milan. This is what annoys me, and the club leadership is just... That's all I need to say. Speaking of revamp, well, Juve set the reboot button in the international break, finally firing Thiago Motta. I mean, it was bound to happen. The results were so bad, especially the last two games before the international break. And so a regular meeting became a shouting match between sporting director Giuntoli and Thiago Motta, with Giuntoli proclaiming, "I am ashamed of having hired you," typical Italian drama. And so Motta is out. Who did they appoint as an interim? Well, they went for Igor Tudor. There were other names. Mancini was mentioned. Maybe Mancini wanted to have more security beyond that season. Where is Igor Tudor? We'll see the season out, and will happily step down and boost his CV by having coached Juventus. And he got a winning start. Overall, this round, though, I have to say, was rather meager affair. Not many goals scored. We had, of course, the big games. We had the big Napoli win. We had Inter exerting pressure. Both of the games involving the Milan teams were more or less games of two halves. But it was very much a round coming back from international break. So not much happening, except there was a little bit. I mean, some results were rather eye-catching. Look no further than Fiorentina, Atalanta. It is an inconvenient truth for all hopefuls for European spots, but Fiorentina are not going away. They get a second consecutive win against a top four opponent after beating Juventus before the international break. They now beat Atalanta at home 1-0, fully deservedly so. The goal came through Moise Kean when he spilled the ball, and he just darts onto goal, buries it. He's in absolutely amazing form. Ranieri in the second half probably should have made it 2-0. Fiorentina get that win, which in the end doesn't come as much of a surprise as Atalanta. While everyone is still remembering the great Atalanta that we saw in 2024, Atalanta is not in great form. They actually, ever since Gasparini kind of announced that he is most likely going to step down, they have really a rough patch. And with that loss, even a top four finish is in danger for Atalanta. At this point in time, watching Milan is frustrating. However, it's not surprising anymore. And this is, I think, the worst thing that I can say about this Milan team. In the big clash against Napoli, the emotions were running high. I mean, there was Careca and Alemão being honored ahead of the game. I think there was also Lavezzi in there. Then the players laid some flowers in the curva to honor a youth team player who had passed away not too long ago, so rather tragic circumstances. So emotions running high in an already emotional environment in Naples. And then Milan just concede such simple goals. I mean, Di Lorenzo's deep ball to Politano, who can slice through the defense. I mean, no one's really challenging him. Goes on to goal, and it's 1-0 after barely a minute played. Really, really disappointing. And Napoli were very much on top. And Lukaku in the 19th minute, it was the natural consequence, makes it already 2-0. It could have been worse. There were plenty of chances, especially in the opening 25 minutes. What really annoyed me is that Lukaku is absolutely free in the box, and Milan players saying offside, 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 but Kyle Walker puts him onside. I mean, completely lost in no man's land. Another self-inflicted goal. And Milan really didn't show up in the first half. However, they did so in the second half. And wouldn't you know it, if you bring on Leao for Joao Felix, suddenly there's a little bit more threat to your game. And yes, I think for Milan it's pretty clear. The league season is gone. They're throwing that away. It's all about the Coppa in midweek, and so I guess that's why Leao was not playing. But suddenly Milan looked a whole lot more threatening, whereas Napoli curiously just sat back. And so Milan earned a penalty, a very contentious one, because Theo just gets his leg between the feet of Billing and then falls over. Yes, there's contact there. I guess somehow you could give it as a penalty, but this was really one that Theo wanted to have. And then Pulisic gives the ball to Santi Jimenez, who takes a really bad penalty that's easily saved by Meret. And so the comeback was not very much on. Conceição, as always, puts on the cavalry then. I mean, he brings on the other Jimenez, he brings on Luka Jovic, he already had brought on Chukwueze earlier as well. And yeah, they get a goal. When a Theo Hernandez cross is tapped over the line by Jovic, Santi Jimenez would also have been there. It was actually quite unclear who got the goal. And then Milan were even exerting more pressure. And it was mostly Leao who was the threat, who looked in really good shape. Yeah, I hope he shows that form in the derby in the midweek. But so it's a loss for Milan, another loss. I mean, this is already the 9th loss this season. Whereas Napoli keep up with Inter and got a huge 3 points. I mean, if you saw Conte celebrating after the saved penalty, you knew what this all means for him. And with Inter's really rough schedule coming up, Napoli actually not too uncomfortable with sitting just behind Inter, and also they have David Neres back, who gives them a completely different dimension in the attack. The weekend started off with a disappointing 1-1 draw for Como against Empoli. Duvikas in the 61st minute final had given Como the breakthrough. However, Kouamé gets the equalizer. It is a point for Empoli that might still be too little. However, it is a point that keeps them at least hoping for survival. At the same time, Bologna continued their good run with a 1-0 away win at Venezia. Orsolini scoring the winning goal. However, this was not the Bologna that trounced Lazio just before the international break, but rather a Bologna that held on, because Venezia actually really created chances and couldn't get the job done. Story of the season for Venezia so far, whose performances are much better than their position in the table. On Igor Tudor's debut for Juventus on the bench, Juve get a 1-0 home win over Genoa, their bogey team who played in those beautiful Boca Juniors inspired jerseys. A Kenan Yildiz goal gives Juventus the 3 points. However, that's pretty much everything that I can talk about. The performance was not great, but at least it was good to see a lively coach on the bench of Juve for once. And the Roma stormed all the way into 6th spot. I mean, they were close to the bottom of the table when the Ranieri took over, and now they most likely will end up in Europe. However, this was a hard-worked win at Lecce, with a Mancini goal being disallowed in the 68th minute for an offside, and then Dovby getting the winning goal in the 80th minute. Yes, not pretty, but they get the job done. A 3-goal second half explosion for Cagliari, Viola, Gaetano and Luvumbo scoring against Monza gives Cagliari important 3 points in the quest for survival. They have now a 6-point cushion to the relegation spots. It was very much a game of two halves in Milan, when Inter totally dominated Udinese in the first half. Arnautovic opening score in the 12th minute and Fratesi doubling it up in the 29th. There was absolutely nothing coming from Udinese. However, for whatever reason, Inter then took the foot off the gas and led Udinese back into the game. And Oumar Soleil in the 71st minute pulls one back, and then it was hanging on time. They were almost about to squander that lead. However, Inter in the end hang on for important 3 points. At that time, they took a 6-point lead over Napoli and putting pressure on the Neapolitans. Unfortunately, the Monday evening games capped the rather meager Serie A fare that we got this weekend. There was just too much on the line in the meeting between Verona and Parma. Could only end up in a 0-0 draw. A draw that helps Verona a whole lot more than Parma, who again sit outside of the relegation zone, but could have put a whole lot more distance to the dreaded places. And also the evening game between Lazio and Torino was not a great watch, and Lazio are really doing their best of destroying an overall really positive season. They're falling apart at the wrong time. I think in this form Europa League is probably not gonna happen, and they might even not get into the Europa League through the league if they continue in this form. They were the better team. They had a little bit more without creating much. Marušić in the 57th minute finally gets the breakthrough with a nice curl shot from outside of the box. However, then in the 82nd minute, they get caught out on the counter again. Ginetis gets the equalizer, and so more points dropped for the Laziali. It was already clear after the last round, Atalanta out of the title race. Finally and forever, I called them out already in January. It's now between Inter and Napoli, who had been stumbling for a while, but maybe now picking up the pace again. Inter enjoy a 3-point lead over Napoli, and in a regular season, I would actually think that this should be enough. Our Inter's schedule is really rough, and the one thing that might be saving them is that they have a relatively easy games coming up in the league, which might get them the necessary points. However, Napoli, now that they have Neres back, and if they show what they have shown against Milan in the first half at least, I think Napoli really can mount the challenge, and we might go down to the last match day of the season for the title race. Inter still very much the favorites. Even more exciting is the race for the European spots. And let me say it, Milan are more or less out to qualify for Europe via the league. I mean, it's a 4-point deficit already to Fiorentina, and yes, you're playing Fiorentina in the next round, so you could cut that in half, but that's only to 8th place. I don't think you will make 7th, which you probably will need to make it into Europe, unless of course you win the cup, which you haven't done since 2003, which is one of those real stains for me on Milan's legacy. But Milan aside, we have Atalanta, Bologna, Juve, Roma, Lazio and Fiorentina vying for these European spots, and the top 4 race is wide open. I actually could see Atalanta falling out of it at this moment, which is something I never thought possible. I mean, Atalanta were in a title race, for crying out loud. A little bit like Juve, hitting the skids late in the season, and I think Juve might stabilize. I mean, if you get in a better performance, I think Juve might get enough points to potentially make it back into Europe, although it is Bologna that currently sit there. However, rough schedule coming up. Same goes for Roma. And I just want to mention Roma ahead of Lazio. If you would have told me that even a month ago, I would have thought you're crazy. Roma are ahead of Lazio. We have also a pretty exciting relegation battle. I mean, Monza, Venezia already out, but then Parma, Lecce, Empoli kind of drawing straws of who will go down. I think Cagliari with that win looks safe, as to Hellas and Como, but Como I never really thought of as a relegation candidate. We have Coppa Italia semifinals. I have not yet decided whether I will do a video afterwards. I think my work schedule more probably will not permit it, and there's also a little matter of my luck having also a semi-final in the cup. But the big one, of course, is the Derby della Madonnina on Wednesday, same time almost as Lusk is playing, so I probably will not see much of that one. Before that, Bologna taking on Empoli. It looks like a free pass for Bologna. However, Empoli, they are the surprise team so far. I mean, they've ousted both Torino teams on penalties. They also have beaten Fiorentina on penalties, so they had a pretty good run so far. Can they make another surprise by ousting Bologna and then face one of the Milan giants? And of course, it's two-legged. I hate two-legged semifinals in a cup competition. That should be abolished, if you were to ask me. I also think there's a whole lot more exciting in the round that's coming up. We have actually quite a few really good games, at least big name games, and it kind of builds. We have Milan Fiorentina. Yes, this is only 9th against 8, but you know, it's a big name fixture in an Italian context. Of course, I'll be watching, and of course, I'll be yelling at the screen all over again. Atalanta take on Lazio. That is now the duel of the desperate teams that wanna stay in there. So pretty big one there. Roma against Juve. Another huge matchup for the Champions League spots already. How well will Tudor do, or will Ranieri really mount a comeback for the ages? And honestly, the best game comes on Monday evening when Bologna take on Napoli. This could have huge title implications because Inter have a relatively easy game at Parma, where I would expect nothing but 3 points, and a valiant battle by Parma, but not much more. So those were my thoughts on the comeback of Serie A after the international break. I have to say, Italian football is again a little bit on the downward spiral. The title race is a race between two imperfect teams. The races for the European spots, I mean, the teams are stumbling all over. So the top of Serie A, while really dense, and that makes it exciting, it's not great in a European context, and European performance do not back it up. Add to it troubles by the Azzurri. and you see that there needs to be a whole lot of work done, and it would definitely help if the top teams in Italy actually would really also hire Italian talent and promote it and get them to the next level. But that's wishful thinking. Let me know your thoughts on everything from Juve's firing of Thiago Motta to the current round to Milan's state of affair. Whatever you want to say, drop a line below in the comments. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. And I will talk to you soon about more things in my Serie A universe. Bye! Hey there! I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, here are some videos and playlists that you may enjoy too. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the little bell icon so you get notified whenever something happens in my soccer universe. And with that, have a wonderful day. Bye!